Check 1, 2. There we are. Here we are, live, Marcus Conte reporting. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How are you? Oh, what a show we got today. You're going to love this, right? What is enlightenment? What the hell are we talking about? Enlightenment? We're supposed to be talking about politics. We're supposed to be talking about elections and all the chaos in the world, right? But what about spiritual enlightenment? Is it something that's possible? Is it something that's real? Is it something that is reserved for monastics and monks that sit off in caves and meditate and achieve some sort of something else? What exactly is it? So we're going to look at, I got a wonderful guest today. His name is Joseph Mauricio. He is a senior Shambhala Buddhist teacher, meditation teacher, life coach, 30 years experience offering this and experiencing the meditation and the Shambhala Buddhist path for many, many years. So we got an expert. We got an expert here, and he's a old friend of mine, and he's on hold. He's listening. He's watching. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. This is going to be, it's very interesting. Weevil Girl in the house, William Smith, Vinny DiMartini. I got Vinny's new voice. Vinny, you ready for your new voice? Vinny DiMartini, motherfucker. That's your voice, Vinny. That's what you sound like, man. So there we go. We are live, playing with some new toys today. So give me a little, cut me a little slack, bro. How we doing, by the way? Path for many, many years. Shh. All right. So this is my thumbnail today. This is Joe Maurizio. He's down in the corner. We're going to play a couple of guru clips. We're going to watch the gurus tell us what exactly is enlightenment. Guru? I don't want no fucking guru. What are you talking about, man? I'm my own person, man. I don't need no guru to tell me what enlightenment is. Don't let the mind go that way. Happy New Year, Casa Philly, Camden. How are you, man? So I got a website. My name is Marcus Conte. We're live every morning at 9 a.m. Whether YouTube likes us or not, we're here. And we love YouTube. We do. We really love it. And we sympathize with the pressure to censor people. We know that government is, stepping on got the boot on their throat, and we sympathize. We're here for you, YouTube, and CIA and FBI. You guys could take a break today. The FBI could take. I think that the FBI that watches and monitors could take a break today, because we're not talking about anything. We're not going to talk about anything that interests you today. We're going to talk about spiritual enlightenment. Maybe you could, take a day off and just watch the show, and maybe you'll go away on your own. But other than that, every morning, 9 a.m., 9 a.m. If you like to contribute to this program, I got a PayPal link. There's Patreon, as well as ways to contribute. There's also Granny Cat. Granny Cat channel is up and running. And so let's start here. If you think this is Thich Nhat Hanh, the late great Zen Buddhist monk that recently died, said about enlightenment. He said, well, he didn't say it about enlightenment. He said about the kingdom of God, or nirvana, which essentially equates to enlightenment. If you think the kingdom of God is just an idea, now this is Thich Nhat Hanh saying it, just a fairy tale, reconsider. If you think enlightenment is something abstract, that nirvana is something you might experience after you die, you are wrong. For those of us who practice, the kingdom of God is there, available right here, right now. So that's the great Thich Nhat Hanh. He says it in videos many, many times, that exact phrase. I couldn't find the clip, but I read it for you. And so that's one of the gurus. I want to look at this guy right here. This guy's awesome, right? This is Ajahn Sona, right? He looks like Uncle Fester a little bit, and he's going to tell us about the stages. It's Uncle Fester. He'll tell us about the stage. He's a great guy, man. He's a lovely man, and we talk about him. Let's listen to Ajahn, which is teacher Sona.
Enlightenment. It's a term bandied around commonly. You hear this in spiritual talk, and you hear this in political talk. You hear about the enlightenment of Europe, and it's so vague in people's heads. If you're a Buddhist practicing in the Theravada dimension, it has a very specific meaning. And it's very interesting to find that out, because it really doesn't have very specific meanings in almost all other spiritual usage. And people, when they hear so-and-so's enlightened, there's an enlightened Sufi master, there's an enlightened Catholic nun.
He said there's an enlightened sushi master. I've met one of those. I met one of them in a sushi joint.
And there's an enlightened Hindu Swami. They must be enlightened. Oh, you mean they're just like the Buddhist? They're enlightened. And so this is a bit of a travesty, actually.
So he's referring to the Buddhist definition of enlightenment, and in his mind, anything outside of that is as he said, a travesty, and he's going to explain to us exactly what it is in a Buddhist sense, in a Buddhist perspective. The Buddhists coined the term enlightenment, I believe, so they get credit for it. All right, so this guy's a Theravadan Buddhist. Also, you might hear the word Hinayana. He's a student or teacher of the Hinayana path, Theravadan Buddhism.
The misuse of this word, it's just a borrowed English word. And so-and-so is enlightened. Can't they be enlightened too? They may be something, whatever they are. But if they don't fit the definition of this, then it's not what the Buddha is talking about. It's not what the classical definitions in the Theravada school are about. If you're not aware of what is being described here, then that's not what we're talking about. So one should know this formula. And there's a few different slight variations in the suttas, but the classical one is there are 4.
No audio? Who's saying no audio? Who's saying there's no audio in what? Where's there no audio? Where is there no audio? Speak up.
Stages of enlightenment. And the other...
Where is there no audio? Hold on a second, Joe. Where is there no audio? Hold on a second. That's not good. Where's there no audio? You can't hear that. You can't hear.
That you should be aware of.
Raise your hands if you could hear Ajahn Sana speaking. He should be, you hear him.
Of is what's called the 10 fetters, because the 10 fetters, fetters meaning chains or sort of ropes that are binding the person, that are preventing them from full liberation. These have to be cut away. They have to be eroded and eventually fall away in order for the person to be free. And so the stages of enlightenment are intimately related to the falling away of these bonds, these chains. The first stage of enlightenment is called Sotapanna in Pali, and it is often translated as a stream enterer. One enters the stream of of the Eightfold Path. It's often spoken of as going upstream rather than downstream. Downstream is more or less going with the world, the tendencies, and most people actually decline. They flow downward rather than upward.
Right.
It's just easier in life to go down than it is to go up. Up means almost a continuous effort. So Sotapanna is having entered the stream. There's also a simile which is called crossing the stream. The stream is what's between you and the far shore. Far shore represents Nibbana. This shore represents samsara, the place that floods from time to time and wipes everything away. Safety is on the far shore. So these are some similes to use and keep in mind. And so the first stage of enlightenment, in brief, it's attainable by lay people and monastics. And at the time of the Buddha himself is proclaiming many thousands of people having attained this stage of Sotapanna, stream enterer.
Perfect.
Path.
Let's listen more. If
They're
there's
also now confident in the
if there's buffering in the chat, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just a day of buffering, and it won't be on the rerun. You won't see it.
teachings of the Buddha, because you've seen two things which the Buddha is pointing to and directing you to, and you saw them yourself. And that's why doubt regarding the teachings, the essential teachings of the Buddha, the doubt regarding that has fallen away because you can see it yourself.
You see what he's saying? He's saying that enlightenment is not something outside of you. You can see it yourself. That's the kicker right there. The good Ajahn Sana is telling you that it's an inside job. You see it. What is enlightenment? You see it. Something opens up and you see it. And then it's unshakable, as he says.
You have looked through the microscope. You see, if you know, at some point in European history, there's a whole hidden world, the microscopic world. Now, once they invented these lenses and so forth, when you looked into it, oh my goodness, there are all kinds of beings that are present at the same time as we are that we never knew about before. There are worlds within worlds at the microscopic level. The other metaphor might be to look through a telescope, and then you start to see that those twinkling stars are actually galaxies.
Something else was there, says Uncle Fester. There's something else there that we didn't notice initially. Right? How do we get there? Andy Garcia points out Uncle Fester. He does. It's like it's a compliment, man. It's good to be. Uncle Fester was my hero as a child.
You see the surface of the planets, etc. So
Okay.
once you've looked through it yourself, it's no longer a matter of faith. You have seen it yourself, and now you realize that there is such a reality. This has fallen away and transformed you. And this stage of enlightenment it's called enlightenment because it's irreversible.
It is irreversible. Big point. The good Theravada Buddhist of his entire life is telling you that enlightenment, the stage of entering the stream, is permanent. Permanent. You can't go back. There's no going back.
It has arrived with an intensity that is not going to fade on you. In spiritual practice, quite often, you do have moments of clarity, realizations, sweeping feelings of loving kindness and compassion, all kinds of luminous moments. And then a period of weeks, months, years go by, and it leaves your system. You experience a reversal. So the intensity of the experience was not strong enough. The vision was not intense enough to be irreversible.
So you were just like you were a tourist for a while. You saw it. There was an opening. I saw it, and then I stopped, and then it went away. Is what he's saying, right? But and then he concludes that if it stays, then it's permanent. Right? Let's listen.
So that's one of the definitions. Is it enlightenment? Well, is it reversible? If it's reversible, it's not enlightenment. If it's irreversible, it is enlightenment. You're
Pow.
in the stream.
You are in the stream if it's permanent. Wow, that was good stuff. Well, let's listen to Chongyam Trungpa. He is the founder of the Shambhala tradition. We're going to talk to Joe Mauricio, who is a teacher in this lineage, the Kagyu Tibetan lineage. And is a fascinating guy. He escaped from, if you don't know the story, back in the 70s, the early 1970s, the Chinese invade Tibet, and they start to invade the monasteries and spook out all of the Telkus and the Rinpoches and all these guys sitting in these monasteries meditating. And the Chinese came in and said, the game is over, time to, they were either going to get killed or they were going to escape. And Chongyam Trungpa has an amazing story about eluding the Chinese for more than, for 6 months, climbing the cold mountains of Tibet. So here he is, and he's he airlifted in. This is one of the first guys to have airlifted in directly from the monasteries of Tibet, right, where it was arguably secretive for many years, or for their entire life. The reality is, if China didn't invade Tibet, Chongyam Trungpa likely wouldn't have come to America and landed in a room full of hippies, teaching them a very high art of mindfulness. What he taught was, for the most part, reserved for monastic people, right? And here he is offering it to regular people. Let's listen.
Having discussed already the notion of
Feedback.
sutra last night, that certain guidance took place, in a sense that there is a open pattern and good news that it is possible to attain enlightenment.
It is possible to attain enlightenment, says Chongyam Trungpa from the podium at his class on warriorship. I think it's in Colorado somewhere. Enlightenment is possible. Continue.
It is possible. It is not only hypothetical concept. So, having already related with the basic notion of sutra as being part of one's communication to the teaching, understanding of the teaching, that although we have discussed, as we have discussed last night, that there was very little material that has been translated into the English language, or for that matter into the French or the German. but still the dynamite exists, and that creates enormous spark of energy. And maybe that person can experience the heart of the teaching directly, precisely, and thoroughly, rather than trying to get into the swimming into the sutras, the numerous sutras, which would be like swimming in the ocean. And if you have no idea as to where's the shore, where's the beginning of the sea, the ocean, that you could lost yourself in millions of sutras, which would be...
Right, so he's basically saying experiential experience trumps the piles and piles of Buddhist teaching. That's what he's telling you. He's saying you don't need to know anything about any of that. All you need to know is discipline to sit and meditate, and there you find it. That's what he's saying. The other way is to study, the ancient texts and try to make heads or tails out of it, and then spin that into an enlightened state. And he's basically telling you that there's a different approach. Hence the foundation of his teaching, Shambhala.
Be very difficult to work with and sort out. So that is why the Bodhisattva path becomes extremely important to this point. And the Bodhisattva path is to captivating all the principles that Buddha has taught, and trying to bring it into a workable living situation.
I just want to jump ahead now. He talks about not knowing what the hell you're doing in this enlightened state. All right? Let me just get to it right here. Let's listen.
Buddhist way of looking at it. And the one from being evangelical or hysterical or what you call
spit it out,
extremely orthodox and doctrinal pride is because that you begin to realize that you are not saving anybody, not even yourself.
So he's dissing on the yogis that run off to the cave. Right? He's saying that sort of austerity it doesn't serve anybody, right? That the experience is what serves. Let's go.
There is a very interesting dichotomy in the Buddhist way of looking at it. In the one end, complete dichotomy that you have no idea what you are doing. You have no understanding. Only thing you know is you're in suffering and pain and egoless. Apart from that, there's no further understanding, none whatsoever. But on the other hand, beyond that, there is enormous understanding and the complete comprehension of something or other is happening.
Now that right there is one profound statement. He's saying that all you have to do is be mindful, practice this Buddhist instruction on mindfulness, and you don't have to know what the hell you're doing. In fact, if you don't know what you're doing and where you're going, that's precisely where you want to be. And then something else opens up, a complete comprehension of something else. That's what he's saying.
So if you're trying to captivate those experiences on notebook or into a jam jar, if you try to catch the experience and keep it in your refrigerator, it is impossible to do that. And sometimes you begin to feel that you're fooling yourself, which is quite rightly so. But on the other hand, you are not fooling yourself, which is also quite rightly so. And there is very interesting dichotomy there, that the vision of extension and a wide approach and universal vision is fantastic. but at the same time, there's overlay of chaos and confusion.
He said that in there's an overlayer of chaos and confusion. That's pretty profound. Right? Let's listen. What does he mean by that?
As to how to proceed, even how to begin one's journey at all, is confusing.
I hear you. I think I understand what he's saying. He says something too that's a little profound. And we have Joe Mauricio standing by. He's gonna maybe help us understand a little more of this. So he talks about accidents, psychological and physical accidents. I thought this was interesting too.
Involved with a practice of some kind, according to the Hinayana and the Mahayana work, you begin to find yourself being subject to accidents of all kinds, psychologically, physically, all kinds.
A psychological accident. Wow, I bet you didn't know there was such a thing, because I'm hearing this kind of for the first time. What is a psychological? We know a physical accident. You know, you crash your car, you fall down a hill and you break your leg. That's an accident. But what is a psychological accident? An accident that happens in your mind? Interesting.
That you are unaware of yourself, that you have a fight with your husband, and you're trying to hit your husband with the kettle that's sitting on your stove, and pick it up, hold it up, and you think you're going to throw it at him, but in turn you get burnt by the hot water inside.
I get it. Listen to this. He talks about, over here, he talks about what is exertion? That's one of the biggest obstacles in meditation. People say, it's too hard, I can't do it. It's too hard. Well, let's listen to the teacher tell us about exertion, what it means. Tell us.
The sense of celebration takes place. Because the activities that you are involved contains freshness constantly in your life. That everyday life situation may be repetitive in a basic pattern, but at the same time there's a spark of a color happening all the time.
Okay.
That exertion is joy.
Joy.
Right.
So exertion becomes joy, because it's not joyful in the beginning. You're like, why does my mind keep flipping out? Right? And then it becomes joyful. That's pretty powerful. So then there is no longer effort per se. The effort is joyful. So that's actually not effort. You're in the stream, motherfucker.
Rather than that question of like you're being in a concentration camp or labor camp. But exertion, this point, is a sense of openness.
Look at the young hippies. Look at the young people of the 70s flocking to the message of enlightenment. Look at them. Who are they?
Openness, sense of joy, sense of celebration, and more of a sense of humor at the same time. That there is a lot of dignity in terms of practice that you're doing, that work you're involved. That sense of openness happening all the time. So you are tuning yourself into that particular situation. It's a sense of exertion and openness. And once you are interested in the open, and once you begin to take the notion of a celebration, you can work 24 hours a day.
Ooh.
And one
You become a hard worker.
becomes completely industrious and a complete hard worker at the same time, which is another meaning of vriya, Zendu, which also means hard working. And one should understand that quite clearly. It's not question of driving yourself mad and being a hard worker, but a sense of a celebration is taking place. So therefore there is a sense of exertion is taking place constantly as well.
Joe is watching in the. Joe is watching. Joe, if you're watching, this is your 2-minute warning. I think we're in 2 minutes. I'll bring you in. So don't forget to shut your audio off on YouTube, and then join me in the chat in about 2 minutes.
And next paramita is that of meditation or concentration rather of dhyana, which is the same word as Zen. And at this point is a question of accuracy, awareness, total awareness taking place throughout whole day, all the time.
All day, all the time, a sense of awareness. All day, all the time. Right? That's what he's saying.
Not particularly making oneself
Joe is
feel
watching
better
in the.
because
Joe is watching. Joe, if you're watching, this is your 2-minute warning. I think we're in 2 minutes. I'll bring you in. So hold on a second. Don't forget to.
Being constantly there, precisely right there. Whatever happens, you are right there. And the openness takes place constantly, all the time, which can only develop by experiencing the Hinayana discipline of.
He makes one more point, and then we'll move on. He makes one more point that I want to get out there. Hold on.
Shamatha, development of peace, and Vipassana, a development of insight. It can take only place at that level. That there is a sense of a constant continuity can be only found if there is a particular sitting practice of a discipline, meditation takes place, and then the result of that you begin to also tune yourself greater. The sitting practice and day-to-day living experience become very close. The boundaries becomes fuzzy. So
The boundaries between real life, daily activity, and what you do on the meditation cushion become fuzzy. Become fuzzy. That's what he's saying. 1 more minute, Joe. Just hang in there.
that you can work, you can experience that kind of state of concentration or stable thinking is taking place. Another word
Okay, I think we got it. Okay, so that's Chongyam Trongpa, right? And just stand by if you're saying what the hell is going on here. None of this makes sense. A lot of it doesn't make sense unless you have a meditation practice, and then as the gurus have told us, then you begin to see it. Let me just give Joe's background. Joseph Mauricio is he's a teacher, a speaker and life coach who works with private clients and groups. He offers motivational and meditation workshops in academic, business, and private sectors. He is a senior meditation teacher of the Shambhala Buddhist tradition. Joseph has been a close student of Sakyong Mipam, lineage holder of the Shambhala Buddhist lineage, for 30 years. He began teaching 20 years ago at Karma Choling Buddhist Meditation Center in Vermont. He has subsequently taught in schools, businesses, and correctional facilities, as well as yoga, meditation, wellness, and community centers throughout the North America. He created a group called Dharma Junkies, not to be mistaken for Dharma Punks. It is my honor, Joe, if Joe is here. Joe is here. Where's Joe? He's right here. And there's Joe. Joe, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Ah, beautiful. This is, put your hands together for Joseph Mauricio. Joseph, what's up, man? How you doing, Joe? How are you, man? What's up?
Stalling my enlightenment if you applaud for me.
Okay.
Just make it a longer process.
You have let's see who has the bigger cup. This is my teacup. So what's going on, Joe? What are you up to, man? Let's clink glasses. We can do that. Bring the glass up to the camera and clink. Ah, we clinked. We toasted. Well, what's up, Joe? What are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me on the show. It's a remarkable event, and what a great topic. What a great subject.
Right. It is. I mean, I gave it to us from the perspective of, of the gurus, the people who profess it, right? Look, everybody. This is my perspective. Everybody wants enlightenment. Everybody wants a sense of relief from this, perceived life of suffering. Correct? Is that fair to say? We're looking for relief. I want to feel. Give me the relief, right? People turn to whatever for relief, but again, it seems to be enlightenment seems to be being free of that. So what's your experience with that? Do you have any? You watch the Trungpa stuff. What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I wanted to draw a distinction between the two teachers that you showed us. Buddhism, like Catholicism, let's say, or Christianity, even beyond Catholicism, has so many different sects and ideas. So fundamentalist Christianity is so different than, Catholicism. In the same way, Tibetan Buddhism, which is the lineages I come from, is quite different than the first teacher, Uncle Fester. He's from the Theravadan or ancient school, that means, traditions, and they're fundamentalists. Unlike Christian fundamentalists, though, they're highly intellectual.
Okay.
I think fundamentalists are generally thought of as emotional more and charismatic. Buddhist fundamentalists are very, very intellectual. So you've got categories and lists and all of that. Tibetan Buddhists are much more earthy, and their approach is more about meditating and, as you mentioned, the experience. It's not so much about the thought process and getting there through your thoughts. It's actually getting there through your entire being on some level.
Right. Well, that would be the path of Vipassana, where you're one part cerebral, which is the shamatha, and then the also called insight, right? You drop it into the body, and why do I feel this way, right? The feelings tend to trigger the thought. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, in Tibetan Buddhism, which is different than insight meditation, although they all support each other. They're not in conflict, but they have different approaches. And the Tibetan approach, the approach I'm most comfortable with, and the approach that Trungpa Rinpoche is talking about, is often posited in three tiers: body, spirit, and mind. Sometimes they say body, speech, and mind. And people familiar with yoga will know that that's part of their tradition as well. So the mind needs to be conditioned toward enlightenment, yes, but the heart also needs to be open for the experiences. That's what you were saying, coming into the body and feeling the feelings. But also the body needs to be free of untoward static that it creates through tension or difficulty. So the state of enlightenment, so to speak, would be clear mind, open heart, and relaxed body, right? That if your mind is going, oh, I get what enlightenment is, but your stomach is churning,
Right.
then you're not quite there, because you're still tending toward samsara, right? You're still tending towards some kind of aggression.
Right.
That makes
Even, yeah, it does. Even in, like, for example, doing a show, you're talking to someone and mind kicks in to, oh, I know what I want to say. I'm gonna, mind is not listening. Mind is occupied with what's coming next, sort of, right? And I'm aware of it. I'm trying to be, mindful of it. How long does it take, Joe? How long does all this shit take? Because I don't have a lot of time, man. Life is short, and and it's raining out, and I gotta get down to this, man, because I'm suffering. I'm suffering, Joe, and I need relief.
Uncle
Whoa.
Fester's traditions will posit. Oh,
You just
sorry
dropped,
about that.
Joe. You just dropped. There you go.
I didn't drop.
No, you're back.
I didn't drop. We're all good. No, I'm kidding. Uncle Fester's tradition would talk about lifetimes that you would
Mm-hmm.
the stream and take lifetimes to get to the state of enlightenment.
Whoa, 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 wait a second, wait a second. That's not what he said. He said that entering the stream is possible, and that the Buddha there have been thousands, in his own words, thousands of examples from the Buddha and the scriptures that point to people who have experienced it. So there is one. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to clarify that there are. I know what you're talking about. Oh, it takes 10 lifetimes, but that's not what the Fester said or Chungyam Trungpa said. They said it is possible. Thich Nhat Hanh screams from the rooftop that it's possible in the present moment, in this lifetime. Right? You don't have to die to get there. So anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
That's okay. I do this thing when I talk that there are periods, which are the end of a thought, and that's a good time to, interject.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
I'll shut up, Joe. I hear you. I'll stop interrupting you. I'm sorry.
Kind of misunderstood what I was saying, so
Okay.
I shouldn't have posited Uncle Fester particularly. But the early
That's Joe. That's your karma for calling the good guru Uncle Fester, right? I get that karma. Now you are joined to the karma of. Oh, go ahead. It's you, Joe.
There are many traditions in Buddhism that
Mm-hmm.
state that it takes lifetimes to get to enlightenment. I would believe the majority of people believe that point of view, regardless of what you've presented today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rare view to say, you can actually do it in one lifetime.
Okay.
And Tibetan Buddhism, which is called Vajrayana Buddhism, Vajra means indestructible, diamond, adamantine, that their version of Buddhism is geared toward conditioning the mind toward enlightenment, toward unconditioning, but letting go of all the conditioning that society and our upbringing has created to cloud our mind and bringing us back to our natural state. And the reason they believe it's possible in one lifetime, so this is the good news for you, okay? Impatient Westerner, that you actually can do it in one lifetime if you're really committed to letting go of all the conditioning you have. So people say things like no self or non-ego, but those are just words. But all the things that make you, are you willing to kind of look beyond those things and see a reality that may be bigger than that, deeper than that, richer than that? It may include all those things. You may still have certain beliefs, but they're not the reference point any longer. As we enter the path, we're letting go of the body tension. People walk around in postures that are informed by the pain that they created. Eckhart Tolle talks about a pain body, that we actually create physical manifestations of our suffering. What would it be like to let go of that? Like people that practice yoga are doing. They're trying to let go of all that conditioning in the body. What would it be like if we let go of needing in our heart, in our emotions, someone should save us, someone should help us, someone should care for us? What if we started realizing that we could do those things for ourselves, right? Find a real sense of independence. And then that becomes as important as the mental orientation, all the talk. It's about the reality. How are you living your life? And I think that's what Trump Rinpoche was saying. Yeah.
Right. Totally agree. Weevil Girl in the chat says, would you say enlightenment is the pleasure of feeling one with all?
That's an excellent point. And that idea of oneness or unity, it's obviously been misused and is something of a cliche, Buddha asking a hot dog vendor, one with everything, and that kind of thing. Lots of jokes around it, but the reality of it is that we're no longer splitting ourselves away from our world and living in our brain's interpretation of the world. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So to be one with something is akin to a guitar player getting lost in their solo, but still being accurate and present.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does, totally.
Being lost in the process, but still being accurate and present. So it's not so lost that you're not there, but it's a flow state, you might call it. Some people do. This idea that you could be in this non-competitive, non-judgmental, non-separate view of your life. You could be in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. In music, it's you're playing, but you're not the player per se. Something is playing. You're mindful and you're relaxed and you're playing, but you're not necessarily the Chongyam Trungpa. He makes a great analogy. You're the tour guide on this tour, aka a teacher, whatever, and in another respect, you're a tourist. You're just kind of there. You're a tourist. You don't know anything. You're like, what am I gonna see next? Joe, have you seen anybody in your experience as a teacher, break through? Have you ever seen these transformations occur in people? And I'm not talking about the meltdown. I think that's a preliminary. You melt down and then. But have you seen it? Have you witnessed it? Have you experienced it?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it incrementally. I've seen people who have dedicated their lives to meditation, even if they didn't believe they had any kind of ability for it,
Right.
but just with constant, practice, I've seen real transformations in people. Now, have they attained enlightenment? Probably not, because the idea of enlightenment is generally meant to imply a state of which we don't return, we don't fall back from. I think you mentioned that when we spoke earlier.
Uncle Fester talked about that.
We stabilized it. We stabilized it, right? So, but that state that we're stabilizing is, I believe, something that we're seeing all the time. We just don't regard it because it's not about us. It's not about our ego.
Right.
When you said the guitarist gets out of the way, you didn't say that, but you implied the guitarist gets out of the way and lets the music do the talking, so to speak. So, to some extent, what's happening there is we're letting go of that part of the mind that wants to control everything. Right. We think that makes it real. We think that makes us in control and powerful, but it actually limits us, and it keeps us doing the same things over and over again. Enlightenment is the idea that we can move beyond all of that into a kind of a larger space. Now, I don't think there's any fruit to imagining what that means or drawing, connections to psychedelic experience and stuff like that. But those are all things that move people beyond their conceptual framework. But enlightenment is more of a gradual process of moving the mind beyond its conceptual framework, and to address that earlier question, getting to a state of unity or oneness where we're actually not controlling our experience, we're spontaneously present in our experience.
What's the way to it? Is any of this possible without a initial regular meditation practice? Can anybody, as Chongyam Trungpa says, without thoroughly, precisely, and however he says it in his voice, precisely, experiencing and driving down the path of the Hinayana and the Mahayana path? You're in the Mahayana path, but without that shamatha vipassana training, is any of this possible?
Well, not in Trungpa Rinpoche's tradition, right? And he's suggesting that and I think even more so than the earlier tradition that we heard with, which would suggest that meditation is important. But Trungpa Rinpoche's orientation, they call themselves the practice lineage. They believe that's the preemptive energy in terms of the path, right?
Right.
Not they think the intellectual and the study is very important, but it's only a map. An example I've used is that, it's like a map can get you to Boston, but it's not Boston, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it's not until you get to Boston and realize how disagreeable those people are that you really, I'm kidding. But
Yeah.
that, once you get to Boston, you're experiencing Boston. I'm partially from Boston. So, to some extent, reality is different than all these concepts we throw around, like death. I've accepted death. Well, have you? Because until it happens, you don't know what it is. You
Right.
don't really understand what it is. So the idea of enlightenment is getting closer to that direct experience, right? That non-dual experience,
Mm-hmm.
that direct experience, and not separating out into the mind and trying to strategize it,
Right.
being willing to be present. That said, I don't understand any way to get that without shamatha vipassana practice, but some great teachers, Andrew Cohen, Ken Wilber, other teachers have posited that you don't need meditation, that it's
Mm-hmm.
all a state of mind. But it is a state of mind, I think they would concur, that goes deep enough to,
Eckhart Tolle.
open your heart, right?
Eckhart Tolle, for example, also says that
Mhm.
one day he just snapped, and it occurred to him. So without the practice. So Joe, you've sat as a Buddhist teacher, meditation teacher, probably over the years, sat across from hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals trying to crack this mystery. What is the single greatest obstacle that you encounter that comes out of people's mouths, or you perceive in their body language? What's the biggest obstacle?
Well, in terms of my direct experience, it's that need to control, which
Yeah.
I is so ingrained in my psychology that I don't even notice it happening. All of a sudden, I want to be, you know,
Yeah.
steering the ship. Problem is, when we steer the ship, we think we have some kind of self agency, right?
Right.
Okay. But we can only steer the ship in places we've known before. We're just, in a way, steering that ship in circles, the same circles, which is the depiction of samsara,
Right.
spinning around and around, trying to get something that never satisfies us. And so we keep trying to get something that never satisfies us. And that keeps the world turning around. It is very much how materialist society is built. And that's not to denigrate that. I love things. And
How does one detect that in the meditation? What's the thing that tells you that that's happening?
yeah,
It's thinking, isn't it? Is it thinking? When
well,
thinking kicks in?
here's a beautiful example, but
All
this
right.
comes from my tradition and the way I interpret it. All right,
Mm-hmm.
so there's other ways to look at it, of course, but the idea that we're thinking and thinking is a problem is a limited way of thinking about it.
Okay.
Which is to say, if you could step back from the thinking, then thinking is just like clouds in the sky. But our awareness, which lies at the core of our psychology, and I think that's actually a true experience, really, for all of us, except we identify with and get caught up in all the clouds that cover that clear sky.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like the base operating system is completely open and completely available to all experiences. And some traditions believe all experiences in the universe. But we have to narrow that down to make sense of it, to get the groceries on the table, to get our work done.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have this lineage of pain and suffering that goes back to when we were hunter gatherers, even before that, that goes back to when we sprouted little legs and crawled out of the
Mm-hmm.
primordial swamp, we have been competing and trying to keep ourselves alive. That's beautiful. The state of enlightenment isn't keeping yourself alive. It's saying, I am alive and I can now let go
Mm-hmm.
of all of that and actually begin to thrive, begin to flower, begin to blossom. The rose, when it blooms, doesn't any longer need to be worried about its roots and its thorns. Do you know what I mean? It's just completely one in that opening, in that bloom. And I think that's the idea, if that makes sense. We kind of let go of our past conditioning and move beyond it a little bit. But that's not easy to do,
Right, right. Well, Chögyam Trungpa said that it evolves into joy, the actual exertion that, and initially it's a sense of, this is hard, as you said. I can't do this. What's the point? Why don't I take this 20 minutes to plan my vacation? And you tune into the radio instead of the relaxation, right? You're listening to the radio, and the more you reject the radio, something else opens up. I think he referred to it as the sensation of stepping outside of something.
Yeah,
you're
that's
right.
it. Yeah,
you step outside, right?
Well,
and then you can't get back in because you don't want to get back in. You realize
now that's not a state I've gotten to yet, because it's still very sexy for me to go back in.
Yeah, it's fun.
And be like, try to be in that world of competition.
Competition, odd. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's what it
Even
is.
though I don't believe it any longer, but the difference between somebody who's really working on this and somebody who's just musing about it, and that's not a judgment, it's just a different way of looking at it, is a lot of people, when they go into spirituality, believe because they think of something that it's how they really feel, right? So people are always saying things like, well, the Buddha said, or the Buddha said. Well, you know what? There was no written language during the Buddha's time. So I don't know how anyone knows what the Buddha said. There's only what we call the ear-whispered lineage. There's a lineage of stories that come down that people heard. In fact, the very earliest, iterations of this all begin with, thus have I heard. It was a way of saying, I'm not saying this is real. I'm saying this is what I have heard. Right. And it's more important not that people look at the teachings of the Buddha as a real solid thing like laws. They're not laws. They're just recommendations from someone who, went beyond into this state of enlightenment and is offering that for others. The brilliance of his teaching, and same with Trungpa Rinpoche, and I'm sure many teachers, is that they have learned also to be able to care for people that will never attain that state or don't even care about that state. They just want to get the groceries on the table and care for their families. And the teachings also recommend that we could actually become kinder, gentler, and more present in our lives. And that's really profound. You don't have to be completely enlightened to become a nicer person, and become more available to your world.
Right. Let's shift gears. So if there's one way to see if someone is enlightened or close to it, is to talk about politics. Because when you talk about politics, people's heads go like this. You see their neck tighten. You see them. They sit back a little bit. It's like a knot. Like they're reaching for the sword because they feel like they're going to be attacked. You have to be on the left. You're on the right. You're a fucking lefty, man. You're on the right.
Get you, motherfucker. You're on the right. You're a Trump supporter.
Right? They get into this whole insanity, right? And that's kind of why I position myself right here in the middle. So what's you had in a talk we had, you said that you're liberal. You're a liberal. What does that mean? You're a liberal.
Well, that's a different conversation, right? So to some extent, when you're talking about enlightenment, you're going beyond any of those designations. The idea of to step beyond those things, and I keep saying beyond because we're clouded by these designations, right? They keep us locked in. People find a certain power in the surety of their political beliefs, you know?
Yes.
It's real. And you could feel it again in their body, right?
Oh yeah.
You can, you know, in their bodies. I could feel it when I get incensed. And there is nothing as ego confirming. Read Anti-Enlightenment. Nothing is ego confirming as thinking you're right. And
Yes.
I'm sorry about that.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that people should be dumb or stupid and not have opinions.
Yeah. You don't have to apologize for it. It's true. It's absolutely true.
This is a really important point. This comes from my tradition too, that we believe that you can be completely embroiled in your ego and your position of believing you're right and still have the ability, if you're trained, to look beyond that and go, this is all a show, right?
Right.
When you walk out on stage as Hamlet, you have to believe that that's the circumstance, but the actor knows it's not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So to some extent, all of these ego states can be played with, enjoyed with, and we could have a lot more sense of humor. In the tradition, they call that the unity of samsara and nirvana. And that's one of the big things that characterize the later developments of Buddhism. Like the earlier developments saw it very much like we do in the West as a binary. You know, samsara is evil and bad and difficult, and nirvana is the absence of that struggle. But the later schools, particularly the Tibetan Buddhist schools, started seeing that they could be one thing, that you could be in the middle of samsara and still have openness and connectivity to your world because you don't believe it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
playing along because those are the rules of our game. And I think it's important maybe that people play along societally to some things. Problems come when they believe it's them, that it's real, that they're superior to other people because
Yes.
of their beliefs, right?
Right. Yeah. You could see. You could have clear comprehension of what's going on in politics, but not be emotionally attached to it. For example, when someone says the orange monster, when the orange monster's name pops up, they have this idea of racism, sexism, misogynism, fucking whatever, right? They're just, he's the orange monster. I hate him. I hate him. Or they say Biden is a puppet, you know, and such, and everything he's saying is just corporatization repackaged. He's taking advantage of you. Don't trust him. We never went to the moon. These are political views, right? So I think it's very revealing. I would differ to say that I don't think they can coexist. You can't have a conviction into something like that and a full-on human conviction of politics or one side of it and still be peaceful. I think I don't see that. I don't see that as possible. You know what I mean?
It seems like you could be. I mean, the idea of enlightenment.
I've never seen it. That's my point. I've never seen it. I see people that go down the rabbit hole of politics and live there, right? And it's exactly that. It's a rabbit hole. It's you don't get out. You self-destruct in there, and one day you might crawl out of it.
Everybody thinks they're really important, and when you believe something,
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-belief. I'm just saying there's a subtler picture here when the belief and also the understanding that there's no belief coexist in one thing, right? So we use terms like provisional. I have a provisional belief system. It's not the ultimate truth of the universe. The planet really doesn't care. We say things like, you know, the planet cares about Trump, or the universe is going to show him up. And karma is not a reward and punishment system. That's a misunderstanding of it. Karma just means that when you set things in motion, they have a tendency to keep going in that direction until you maybe wake up and change the direction. It seems pretty clear to me that as a society, we're heading into a very difficult directions. But it may be that we've always done that, and that may have been the human experience the entire time. But if we think that we're right, we're not really listening anymore, right? And that's not a state of awakening. That's a state of shutting yourself down. Even if you are kind of right in a lot of ways, but still you're making that into a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of
Concept. It's a concept.
Yeah.
You own the concept. You're. I'm a Republican. I am a Democrat. I am a liberal. I am a conservative. I am a whatever. Right? The concepts, the conceptual, but there's no greater place to look for the how wars start. Right? Without mindfulness, that's how they start. It's ignorance. We bomb Vietnam, North Vietnam, because we think of communism and how the Chinese are supporting one side, and we got to get in there on the other side, and we got to support them. And then years later, none of it was based in any fact or at all. Right? We import communism. You follow what I'm saying? It can start wars.
I have a great story for you. I was teaching a group of students from a university in California that came out to Shambhala Mountain Center in Colorado, and I was in residence there, and I became the prime teacher for them every year for 10 days in January during a semester or mini semester kind of thing. And it was like their practicum semester, and they would come out and we would teach them meditation and Zen archery and have talks. And they were really hip and cool from my point of view. They were, this is the 90s, and they were pierced, and there was a lot of ink going on and a lot of cool hair going on. And I kind of completely misread the situation. And I made a joke about, or I drew a parallel between weapons of mass destruction that don't really exist and creating excuses for defensive behavior and actually attacking people over these things that we perceive. That was, I thought, a very kind of cool analogy to kind of bring in the current situation, but also talk about how ego works. So we actually believe that people are doing these things to us. And so we become, angered. And my thought was this would hit home, and the room was just like crickets. It was beyond crickets. It was like concrete wall. All of a sudden, everything shut down. And I had one of the students I had become friendly with, and I asked her, I said, did I say something wrong? And she looked at me and said, we're from Orange County. Do you know what that means? And she just looked at me like I should. Yeah, I did the same thing. Well, they're Christian and Republican, and staunchly so, regardless of how hip they look, regardless of the skateboards, regardless of how my Eastern point of view would have interpreted them, right? Yeah. I completely misread their point of view. It was an analogy that didn't go any further, right? Yeah. And but that was a real wake-up call for me, because I did the very thing I was trying to illustrate. I had a concept, and that concept created an action, and that action was not appropriate to the situation.
Weevil Girl in the chat asks, more importantly, can anyone sit in a full lotus without damaging their knees? Is that possible? Because I'm sitting. I'm not sitting cross-legged right now because my knee hurts. Is it possible?
Well, that's kind of a cool question. I think that would be better for a yoga practitioner or an Alexander technique person, a physical person. I'm of the school that doesn't believe that's necessary for meditation. I know there are schools that like that because you're really bringing in all of these disparate elements of our psychology together into a unified state. I think you can do that without the lotus, however.
Yeah. Yeah.
if the body is what we
I think there was partly a joke in there. That was partially a joke, but yeah, I would agree. There's no. You sit any way you want. You sit on a chair. You sit in front of a brook. You sit staring at a blank wall. It's all the same as long as you're relatively comfortable and focused on mind. Do you? What about practice, Joe? And then we're all an hour and 9 minutes already. An hour and 9 minutes in. So what do you say to practice? Is it? Do you recommend it? Do you recommend that people practice on a daily basis?
Yeah, this is scaling down from the grandiosity of our subject matter to some extent, and sort of suggesting that enlightenment happens very subtly all the time, and we kind of miss it. We call it ordinary magic in my tradition, that there's
Right.
so much beauty and brilliance to the world that we miss because we're hiding behind these concepts, or we're speeding beyond it. As you said, the mind is so much more fast, right? It's faster, I think, is what we say in English, than say the heart or the body, and that creates a desynchronization. Whereas waking up is a synchronization process. It's bringing mind, spirit, and body together. So every time we come back to the breath, if that's the object of our meditation, which I think is perfect because the breath is reliably in the present, the breath is also largely in the body, so we're connecting mind and body, but we're also relaxing the nervous system, which is implicated in all of that desynchronization. When we're freaked out and our mind is spinning, our nervous system is overreacting, right?
Right.
So bringing the breath in to calm ourselves down is super important for resynchronizing or creating that sense of oneness, right? That spiritual full lotus, right? That can happen in the heart, we say, because the heart is the heart center, sort of central energetically to our being. But we come back into this place in our center, and that actually resets that point of enlightenment. Now, the mind will go, well, that's not enough. I have to worry about this and that. We catch it, we bring it back.
Right.
Agree. We do not need to, absolutely do not need to then see that as a problem. Like, oh, why did I go again? Or my mind is all over the place. That's not the issue. That's like saying, every time I lift my weights, I have to put them down and do it again. You know what I mean? That's how we build the strength of our mind, by bringing the mind back to the present, by reestablishing that synchronicity of body, spirit, and mind with the breath, right? But we keep coming back, and I recommend just that, 10 minutes a day, formally, for people every day. And that if there's other meditations that we do, walking or, listening to music or sitting by the stream, that's all wonderful. That's all gravy. But I think if people really want to transform their mind, to actually dial back on all the sort of any grandiosity and come back to just training the mind to be present. Pema Chodron says it's learning to stay, like training it to stay. And, you don't, because we're so fearful. We want to rise up and run around the room, and just stay. It's okay. And that actually has a profound effect.
Yeah. That's the gap. The gap is when you catch it. You catch the mind drifting. What do you say to people that are not? I don't know if you've sat in front of people in a meditation center. What if they tell you that they don't get lost? That there is no longer a tripping out of the mind. That it seems to have balanced, and I see it when it fizzles. I see it when it sparks, and I see the radio going on, right? Because that is the next step of it, where you're now present, and there is this calming sensation, loss of ego, and then something else opens up. What do you say to people like that say, well,
Yeah.
You say, no, fuck you, it's not happening, man. Or
In
do
my
you say, tell me more?
Yeah, my tradition, we have the two components, which is mindfulness and awareness. So those are two very natural functions of the mind. So mindfulness, regardless of its social context and whatever illusions and fanciful ways that people look at mindfulness as a thing, in terms of the actual meditative tradition that I'm from, mindfulness in Tibet, they call it trenpa, or the ability to place the mind, that we have a natural ability to place our mind. Maybe it's on the news or politics, maybe it's on our favorite beverage, but we have the ability to place our mind on a thing. Awareness then is this larger context that we place that object into, right?
Yeah.
So it's a beer, but that larger context says I can't do this at 11 o'clock in the morning, right? I'll
Right.
have orange juice, right?
Right.
So that larger context is awareness. So placing the attention on the breath is the mindful element, but we don't have to focus or concentrate on the breath because we still want to build that sense of awareness. So it's impossible in time for somebody to be completely embroiled in their mind and into some kind of aggressive scenario and still see beyond that because they've built their awareness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. People are loving it in the chat. This is a great show, says David Brown. I'm listening to it while waiting for the bus. Thanks, guys. See, as I said, people.
Great metaphor for the state of enlightenment. I'm waiting for the bus, and all of a sudden something happens.
You see how it comes from the crowd, right? It comes from the crowd. Everybody, the collective, is here, and we're listening and trying to understand it. Again, my experience is that, I know Chögyam Trungpa, he talks about it. There's a level of chaos and confusion when one enters this kind of a state, mostly as to really not know what the hell you're doing. And I identify with that. And what else, man? What else, Joe? Joe told a great story. I want to tell this story, right? He says, I think this one sums it up. And I've told this story, I think, on this show. Joe said that he used to work at, he worked at Karma Cholan, big meditation place. And he was responsible for the chefery, the cookery and stuff. And the morning, early in the morning, everybody's waking up and they're mindful as a mofo, and they're feeling it, and they're glad to be here, and they can't wait for the festivities to start, and they're gonna sit and be joyful, and then they're in the dining hall in the morning, and they ran out of coffee, and just like the conversation of politics, your body, there's no coffee. I need this, right? I need this, and people lose their fucking mind over an attachment to the coffee, right? And then, and then somebody better get down that hill and buy some fucking coffee, or I want my money back. I love that story. Joe told that story. You also told the story about me at Shambhala taking the door money from $100 or $200 up to $700, right? And I was accused of shaking people down for the money, and that's not true. I'm telling you, right here, it wasn't true. The story is that at Shambhala in New York, the donation table was over there. You walk in and you're already in. And then the donation table was like 10 feet away. And I said, no. Put the table in front of the door so that when people come in and they say, and they see $5 donation, and then and eventually they gamed that system too, Joe. People would say, oh yeah, I gotta, they come in with the cell phone, they walk by you like you're invisible, and it goes from $700 back down to $200. But anyway, I didn't shake anybody down at Shambhala. I just I moved the table, and it was pretty effective, right? Just simple moving the table. It's like it's what you say. You gotta you're mindful, but you also have to eat. It costs money to turn the lights on and keep it going. You know what I mean? Anyway, man. What else, Joe? What else? I'll give you the last word, and we'll great conversation. Thank you for joining me. It's courageous, really. This is courage right here. You know, because
Do you have any questions in the chat?
because I could be an irritable kind of guy, and I in the chat. Let's see. A question in there for myself or Joe or go ahead and do it. And again, we have a delay. There's a bit of a delay because we're in their future. We're a few minutes in. What's on the horizon, Joe? Anything? Anything? Whoa! You lost your connection. Kick it again, Joe. I think we're just buffering a little bit. We're buffering. Are you there, Joe? Oh, we got lost. Yeah.
I definitely have something that I'd like to add, though.
Yeah, throw it in, man. Go.
Yeah, there's an idea of spiritualism versus materialism, and I'm always skeptical of positing any binaries because I believe in the middle way that they can be resolved and become a greater issue. How could you bring spiritualism into material things and elevate material things to the state of materialism? They don't have to be separate. People asked Trungpa Rinpoche in this great talk, Building Enlightened Society or Creating Enlightened Society. There were 2 talks he gave, one in New York, one in Boston. But the Boston talk, this woman said, I love to shop. Is that going to be a problem to my enlightenment? To which Trungpa Rinpoche, and this is so characteristic of him, he just beamed. He had the most beatific beam. He just beamed and he grabbed his lapels of his coat and he said, I just bought this suit. And he smiled. He goes, I rather like it. And he went on to explain that created a situation where he felt he was conveying the Dharma through his appearance and actually, having some respect for that point of view. And if you don't believe that the Dalai Lama doesn't spend some coin on those robes, you're mistaken, right? So the whole approach is not anti-material, that we have to live.
It's not renunciation in that sense. It's these things are happening, right? And these things are part of the human experience, and you could crash into them, if you like to use that phrase. You can experience them without falling into the level of samsara, of suffering, of I like this shirt I just bought, but man, I wish I had that other shirt too.
There you go. Exactly. Right? So the renunciation that you spoke of isn't to the shirt. It's to your attachment.
Right. Correct.
You're believing that this means something. It doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Right. It's just a nice shirt that makes you happy and then let it go, right?
Right.
So spirituality is something that's completely mutable, changeable, and an open system. And materialism are things that are tangible and concrete. A problem happens. I'm sorry to add this so late. But I think it's an important thing. And you evoked Trungpa Rinpoche. This was his primary teaching when he came to the West, was cutting through spiritual materialism.
Right.
Which, by the way, is the title of a book that is just phenomenal and life-changing for many people. And the idea that even our spiritual orientation can be materialistic. It could be like, I'm better than you because I believe in this school. And you probably heard some of that in some of the things I've said. And I apologize for that. That's just a little personal pride.
Never apologize for spiritual condition. I don't. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. So to some extent, right? When we attach to our spiritual point of view, we think that we're better than other people, right?
Yeah.
And that creates the lack of unity, the lack of non-duality, that schism. We're comparing. And then when we are comparing, it's never good enough,
Right.
We never find what we need. So we bring it all together in the human heart. That's what's said, is that you come back to right now and start to build confidence that you're enough without the shirt. And if you wear the shirt, so much the better. But you're enough.
Well, how about take your shirt off? How about no shirt, for example?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I'd recommend that necessarily.
I don't think anybody wants to see either one of us do that. But I hear you, man. I hear you. All right, Joe. Cool. Very, very good talking to you, man. Really, I think people got a lot out of that. It's an open debate. It's. I think I gathered. It's definitely through experience and a practice of what when we get to a point of comfortability. Right. Let's thank Joe Maurizio, and thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate you being here, man. Peace. I'll talk to you soon, Joe. Thank you.
Would you tell people about?
Yeah. Plug yourself. I'm so sorry. Plug. Go ahead. Plug away.
Yeah. Well, plug myself.
Drop the links in the chat so people can go directly to it. JosephMaurizio.com is a place. I flashed your website, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay, but I don't have access to the chat. I tried that already. So, but it's JosephMauricio.com. That's my website. And every Monday at 7:00, we have a gathering with a lot of discussion and a lot of heart and a little bit of teaching and some meditation. And It's open to anyone, regardless of their religious training or tradition or how much meditation training they have. Anyone could come and just be part of the community. Mondays at 7:00. And the website, there's a Facebook group, Dharma Junkies, but you could contact me at josephmauricio.com.
I just dropped the link into the chat, so if you wanna see it, you click on it. All right, man. Thank you, Joe. I'm gonna take us out. with some music, man. I'm gonna take us out with some channeled music. I'm not thinking right now. There's no thinking. There may be some thoughts, but there's absolutely no thinking going on, man. All right, Joe. Peace, man. I'll see you next time, man. We'll talk later. Peace.
Thank you, man. This was wonderful.
Thank you, man. Peace out. Yeah. Peace, Joe. Yeah, man. Oh, I'll do this too. In the Shambhala tradition, there is a dedication of merit. Dedication of merit. We end the program like this. Good time to do it. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.